The New Orleans Saints had a typical Saints year. They did great in the regular season, but of course, they would fall short of the finish line yet again in the playoffs. And with Drew Brees likely hanging it up and publishing the book That's His NFL Career, the Saints are now entering a new era. And in today's video, let's talk about what's next for New Orleans and what they can do in this offseason to improve and really what they should do. Before we do get started though, make sure you hit that like button if you guys enjoyed, as it really helps out the channel. Also, subscribe if you guys are new and enjoy the content on here so you do not miss out on any new videos. Plus, we're on the road to 500 subs, and once we hit our goal, I will do a reaction to my first 2 videos ever, and a Q&A. And the daily shout out goes to Sports Earth. Go ahead and check him out. The link to his channel is in the description below. But with that being said, let's get this video started. And I want to start out by talking about the Saints roster. And Alvin Kamara is the first player I want to talk about. And Alvin Kamara, he had an amazing year. He is one of the best running backs in the NFL and can, catch the ball and is a good receiving back and is also a pretty good running back, good at rushing the ball. He had 932 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, averaging 5 yards a carry, and had 756 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns this past year. Michael Thomas is the next player I want to talk about. And Michael Thomas, well, he is one of the best receivers in the NFL. Now, the guy did have a down year since the guy did not play in a lot of regular season games. But even then, he is still a really good player. Emmanuel Sanders is the next player I want to talk about. And Emmanuel Sanders, even though he is getting up there in age, he is still a really solid player. He had 726 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns this past year. Jared Cook is the next player I want to talk about. And Jared Cook, he is a pretty solid player. Now, the guy is not some elite tight end, and I do know he had that fumble in the NFC divisional round, I believe, but even then, he's still pretty good, and he is a free agent, and who knows whether he's back with the team in next year. But he had 504 yards and 7 touchdowns this past year. Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, let's talk about Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan did not have an absolutely record-breaking outstanding year, but he still had a pretty good year with 7.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 26 pressures. Up next, let's talk about Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson had an amazing year. He had 13.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 33 pressures. He will be a free agent, and we don't know if he will be back with the team next year, but the guy is still a really good player. Next up, let's talk about Demario Davis. Demario Davis is a pretty good all-around linebacker. He had 5 passes defended, 4 sacks, and 16 pressures this past year. Next player I want to talk about is Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins, while the guy is not an elite safety, the guy is still a pretty good player. He had 2 interceptions and 10 passes defended this past year. Up next, let's talk about Janoris Jenkins. Janoris Jenkins had a pretty underrated year, and while the guy is not some elite top-tier corner, he had 3 interceptions and 12 passes defended this past year, and was pretty decent for them. Marshawn Lattimore is the next player I want to talk about, and Marshawn Lattimore is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. He had 2 interceptions and 11 passes defended this past year. Marcus Williams is the next player I want to talk about, and Marcus Williams, the guy is, of course, he's infamous for the whole Minneapolis Miracle botch, but even then, he's still a really good player. He had 3 interceptions and 7 passes defended this past year. CJ Gardner-Johnson is the next player I want to talk about. And CJ Gardner-Johnson, the guy, even though he was the victim of a lot of fights and all, he had a pretty good year with 3 interceptions and 13 passes defended this past year. And that will wrap up the roster. Now, the Saints are going to have some questions heading into the offseason, and primarily has to do with the quarterback position. For all we know, Drew Brees is most likely going to retire in the offseason this year. And unfortunately for them, they do not have a lot of cap space in this year's offseason. And I don't know if they will be able to make a crap ton of, big splashes in free agency. So if I'm the Saints, I'd probably head in a rebuild/retool phase. And if you ask me, I think that's the direction they're gonna head into. But even then, even though they don't have a lot of cap space, I'd definitely try to maximize the amount of cap space you have right now. I'd restructure Janoris Jenkins and Malcolm Jenkins and cut Quan Alexander and Patrick Robinson. And for some options at quarterback, Gardner Minshew wouldn't be bad, and Jameis Winston, if you ask me, would also be a pretty good option. And Sam Darnold, they could also be pretty good options when it comes to free agency and the draft, and maybe even they take a chance on Cam Newton. But those are some options I have, at the quarterback position. But what would I do if I'm the Saints general manager? If I'm the Saints general manager, personally, I would bring back Jameis Winston. Now, Jameis Winston definitely does have his issues as a player. For one, I mean, while the guy is like a pretty solid player, he has issues when it comes to taking care of the ball and turning it over. I mean, we saw that in 2019. But Jameis Winston, if you ask me, sitting next to Drew Brees, there's a good chance he did learn something under him. And if you ask me, Jameis Winston could possibly be, the team's franchise quarterback. I don't think he will be a superstar, but he can definitely be a starter in the NFL. He has all the tools to do it. Taysom Hill, as much as people love the guy, and he's cool and all, but I do not think he is a franchise quarterback. However, I would definitely like to keep the guy around as, as like a good backup, because in my opinion, I think you would make a good backup, and the guy is good for gadget plays and all that. But also, I do briefly want to go over some apparent Michael Thomas trade rumors. Now, first off, I know the guy has attitude problems and all, and he did have, his struggles this year, but do not trade him, okay? New Orleans, if you are watching this, and I'm pretty sure you do know this, do not trade Michael Thomas unless things get way too out of hand, okay? But if you can keep him, absolutely keep Michael Thomas, okay? Sorry if that was loud, but you need to keep Michael Thomas if you really can, because the Saints would be stupid to really trade, a superstar receiver like him unless he really wants out. Now, as for who they should aim to bring back in free agency, using franchise tags, I would definitely bring back I'd definitely try to bring back Jameis Winston. Trey Hendrickson, I would definitely like to bring back if I am New Orleans, but I don't know if he will be back, considering the fact that he had an amazing year, and there's a chance that he wants to use this opportunity to get, the bag and all. Now, Jared Cook, you could maybe bring him back in free agency, but he is, getting up there in age, and who knows if the Saints really want to have like an aging tight end. But yeah, I'd definitely bring back Jameis Winston, hopefully Trey Hendrickson, and possibly Jared Cook. But offseason wise, I don't think New Orleans does much in free agency, but I will go over some, cheaper, okay free agents, they can take a chance on. Rashad Perryman would be pretty good, as outside of Michael Thomas, they are not amazing at wide receiver. Emmanuel Sanders is decent, but they are still not amazing, outside of Michael Thomas. Kendrick Bourne would also be pretty good, as he had a really underrated season for the 49ers. Demario Davis would be alright, and to really get some help on the front seven, taking a chance on K1 Short, I guess that could pay off. So could taking a chance on Adam Butler, who is one of the most underrated defensive tackles in the NFL. He's a decent pass rusher, but he is a really good run stopper. One of the few good run stoppers on the Patriots last year. Shelby Harris could also be pretty good from the Broncos. And to get some safety help, I do think someone like Bradley McDougald could be really good. However, besides that, I don't really think the Saints will do much in free agency. However, New Orleans will own the 28th pick in this year's draft, and they can use that on a quarterback or some other player. Now, some draft targets they can, use to with their 28th pick could be someone like Mac Jones if he does end up falling to them, and he would not be bad at all. As well, I do think Jameis Winston does have the tools to be a pretty decent quarterback. Mac Jones could definitely be even better. Kyle Trask could maybe be someone they take, like if they really want to just take a quarterback with that 28th pick. They definitely shouldn't force anything, but they can definitely take him in like a later round. Trevon Moehrig could also be pretty good with their 28th pick if they want to, improve that safety position. And Joseph Osai would also be pretty good, especially if Trey Hendrickson does end up leaving. But to wrap up this video, I do think New Orleans will be a somewhat interesting team in this year's offseason. They'll probably go in that rebuild and retool process. It will probably be like a rebuild/retool process for them. But aside from that, if you ask me, the Saints do have a pretty good team. And if they can find their franchise quarterback, I have no doubt that they can be pretty good. But with that being said, that will be the end of today's video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button, as it really helps out the channel. Also, make sure you guys also subscribe if you guys are new, and enjoy the content on here so you do not miss out on any new videos. Plus, we are on the road to 500 subscribers, and once we hit our goal, I will do a reaction to my first 2 videos ever. And also, go ahead and make sure to check out Sports Earth. The link to his channel is in the description below. But with that being said, I'm out, you guys.